Hi guys, it's Martin here from Westronics. Today we're going to fix another Ford Transit 4.1 diesel starter motor. Now, many of the starter motors struggle with the problem that they are very noisy after starting or during the start. Now, to demonstrate to you how the problem looks, we'll just simply connect up the battery. Now, just so you know, I'm going to test a good starter now. The starter which actually is brand spanking new. As you can hear, this starter does much less noise. Now, the problem with them starters, with them particular engines is the clutch. The dust from the clutch, it gets into the gear, which is here, and it clogs it up, which that's really why it's become why it's noisy. Now, on top of that, this dust is very corrosive, so it destroys the gear itself. So the gear has to be changed. Today I'm going to show you how to change the gear, clean up the starter, and check the brushes. Now, the first thing we have to do is we have to remove the 13 nut from the back of the solenoid, the nut which joins the brush box, the motor, with the solenoid. We use 13 socket for this. You can use a spanner if you don't have a socket, it doesn't really matter. Now, when we have the nut removed, we can remove the link, and the next thing we have to do is we have to take them two bolts holding the motor onto the drive end of the starter. We have to take them off. For that, we're going to use an 8 socket. Now, while we have them two bolts removed, we want to put the starter upright in the vise and gently remove the motor. Now, when the motor is removed, there's a very important thing we have to check. Now, to make sure there's no clutch dust inside the motor of the starter, the best way to check it is just to have a look inside, and as you can see, this starter has loads of dust inside, which that's the dust we are talking about. That's the clutch dust. Now, just to give you an example, this is the starter which doesn't have any clutch dust inside. That's the difference in between them. You can clearly see all the magnets in this particular one, and this one, there's a dust gathered around the magnets. Now, because we have a dust in our starter, we have to clean the starter out. We can't leave the dust in because it's going to cause a lot of damage to it. Now, the easiest way of doing it is just to grab the motor, put it against the vise or against the table, this little shaft. Now, give it a little tap, make sure it'll come out a bit. Now, as you can see now, the brush box and the armature itself are exposed. Now, what you want to do now is to take it out and push it with your finger as much as you can. When the armature will come out, just grab it by the armature and pull it out. And as you can see, we have the armature with the brush box and the body of the starter separated from each other. Now, what you want to do now is to clean out the starter. The best way of doing it, if you have an airline, it's the easiest way is to blow it. Blow it off with the airline, blow off the dust. If you don't have the airline, you can just simply wash the body itself, and it should be alright. Just make sure you get the most dust out of the body. Now guys, we want to check the brushes in our starter. Now, the easiest way of checking the brushes without pulling out the brush, without the need of pulling out the brush box, is to just simply having a good look at the brush lead here and the bottom of the brush cage, which the bottom of the brush cage is here and the lead is here. If this gap, which you can see from the lead to the brush cage, is large enough, you just need just a couple of millimeters. If that's a couple of millimeters, if that's okay, leave it as it is. Now guys, when we have the body of our starter cleaned and ready to go and the brush is checked, we have to assemble it back together. Now, the easiest way of doing it is just hold the armature like that. Make sure the rubber grommet fits the cut for it in the body. Now, just simply grab the armature of the starter, put your hand inside of the body, hold the shaft of the armature, and gently let it go in. It'll pull in itself because of the magnets in the body. And just gently let it go in. Now, the motor of our starter is assembled and ready to go back on the starter. Now, we can move on to changing the gear in the starter. Now guys, the first step in changing the gear of our starter is to remove the plate, and under the plate you can see all the gears. Now, we have to remove the gears. Now guys, just when you're removing the gears, the only thing to pay attention to is the steel ring around the plastic coupling. Sometimes this ring can be removed and just put aside. It's just one way it fits on, so you don't have to mark it. You don't have to be very careful about it. If it doesn't want to come off, just leave it in. In the bushing there, in the bottom, there's a steel ball which supports the armature. Now, them balls are most of the time they're quite jammed inside there, and they are glued with the grease, so they will not come out. But just pay attention to it. If it falls out of it, you just want to make sure you find it and you put it back in when you be assembling the starter. Now guys, the next step is going to be removing the pin which holds the pin where the gear slides on. The pin is located here, just alongside here. Now, to remove the pin, we need 3.6mm puncher and a hammer. Now, there's two holes, one in, one out. The one in is smaller, the one out is bigger. Put the puncher from the side in and just give it a few taps. As you can see, our pin is out. Now, make sure you're not going to lose it. Now, the next step you want to do is you want to turn around the starter. Now, as you can see, this starter must have been done before because it has a 7mm hole in it which have been drilled in it with the drill. Now, what you want to do, guys, your starters might not have this hole there. You might need to drill it with a cordless drill or with the drill. Now, why do we need to drill it? The reason is very simple. Because to remove the pin where the gear is sliding on, which is this pin, as you can see it here, we have to take the puncher and punch the pin out. It will come out from this side. That was the reason why we had to take off the little lock, because otherwise this pin will not move. Now, we have our starter in the vise, nice and tightly. Now, we'll take the pin again, hammer again. What you want to do, you have to give the pin a few taps. As you can see, the pin is coming out here. Now, once we have the pin removed, you can take the gear out and replace it with the new one. What you want to do is to put a few drops of oil inside on the shaft where the pinion works on. A few drops here, and that will keep it nice and safe. Now guys, we have our new gear here. We have cleaned out the pin a bit, so it's nice and shiny. Now the next step is to fit the gear inside where it should be. Now guys, when fitting this gear inside the starter drive, it's very important to note that this is the pinion which is inside of the drive. Now while you're fitting this, make sure them two forks go in between the plastic part of the pinion and the steel part of the pinion. Now when we have our gear in, it's time to put the pin inside. The pin, as you can see, is sloped a bit. Now this sloped part is going to face the direction towards yourself if you're holding the starter like that. For a simple reason, because when the pin is inside, this little lock will go past it like that to stop it from coming out. Now, when we have the pin inside, we'll take our lock, pull it from the side where there's a large hole, take the puncher, hammer, When you're punching in the pin, you can see the pin going through here, through the little opening there. Now, after our gear is changed and all, we want to put the starter in the vise like that. Now, make sure everything is in its place, which is the steel ring, which I was talking about earlier, and the little ball in the bottom of the opening for the bushing. Now, put our 4 gears back on their places. And our steel cap back where it was. Now, when we've this finished, you put a few drops of oil inside in the bushing there. It'll make it easier for the starter to work. As well as that, remember to oil this shaft, the shaft where the gear slides up and down. Not too much, because we don't want the dust to be sticking into it. Now, the next step is to take the motor of our starter, fit in onto the starter. Now, the only thing you want to make sure of when you're fitting the body onto the starter, that this link goes towards the solenoid rather than away from it, rather than facing away from it. Now, let's put our body onto the starter and use 2 8 bolts, which they use to hold the starter together. Now, when you have this done, you can turn the starter around and put the link back onto the solenoid. Put it onto the connection nearest to the body of the starter rather than the connection which is the further one away. Now, we are going to use our 13 socket and the 1/4" drive ratchet. Now, as the starter is assembled and ready for testing, we can set up our battery and leads to give the starter a go. Now, with our leads set up, everything's connected, it's time to give it a go and see how it turned out. Now, if you're not sure how to connect up the starter for testing, just have a look at my other video of diagnose and fixing for transit solenoid problem, because it shows how to test the starter. Now guys, as you see, everything works perfect. Pinion comes out, turns and comes back. That's what you want to see. Now, thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope it helped you. Please stay tuned for more videos to come. Thanks.